Hey race fans, it's race day, top 5, with me, Frank 5. Richmond International Raceway always has been the last race to get into the playoffs. This time, it made its debut being a part of the playoffs. Still a night race though, and we had battles for position, differing strategies, green flag pit stops in the middle of the stages, and perhaps one of the best drivers of all time sweeps Richmond for the first time in his career, and he finally wins a fall race. Number 1, Kyle Busch, who is particularly known for winning the race of the spring, captured his 6th Richmond race victory last night in the Federated Auto Points 400 Richmond International Raceway, and locking himself into the next round of the playoffs as he held off fierce-charging Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, and Eric Almirola. And Kyle Busch repeated the same thing he did in the spring, started in the back and drove his way to the front. I mean, this time, the first time in the spring, he qualified actually 32nd. He qualified 12th, or qualified A or 11th because his teammate swore his failed inspection. But because of unapproved adjustments, because he actually knocked the wall and qualified, he had to go to the back. And he charged up into the top 10, but then his progress stalled. And in the middle of stage 2, he really wasn't happy with his race car. It was really loose, really tight, really couldn't find the balance of his car. Then stage 3 came, and he found something, or as crew chief Adam Stevens found something, and was able to pass the guys that were pretty much the favorites for most of the night, typical guys that were running at the front. Kyle turned to a factor. He led some of the laps towards the end of the race, had a fierce battle towards the end with Brad Keselowski for the win, and held off Kevin Harvick while negotiating himself through the lap traffic at the end to lock himself into the next round of the playoffs. So Kyle Busch and Brad Keselowski are the only 2 drivers through with wins, and Kyle's going to be pretty happy knowing that he doesn't have to deal with this mysterious roval coming up next week. Number 2, Martin Truex Jr. was probably the best car. I mean, since 2016, Martin Truex Jr. seems to have the car to beat at Richmond, and he doesn't win the race. I mean, last night, he won both stages and led 193 laps, but after the pit stop at stage 2 leading up to the final stage, they had a penalty because they had a loose tire. That was a loose tire violation according to pit road rules. If it's outside the box, if it touches the white line, it's an uncontrolled tire, and he had to restart in the back, and he got stuck back there. He got caution late in the race, and I thought maybe that was probably going to get it back in the hunt, but really with Kyle Busch, the way he was running the latter stage of the race, I didn't really think so. So Truex had to settle for 3rd. Quite a good comeback, but it seems like every time Truex has the best car here, he can't seem to get it figured out. I mean, go back to last year's fall race. I mean, he was going to win the race until they throw the bogus caution for Derek Cope that really wasn't supposed to be caution whatsoever. So, I don't know. Truex will win Richmond one day, hopefully. Number 3, Kevin Harvick, who started on the pole for this race, pulled off a solid second place finish behind Kyle Busch, and his point margin going into Charlotte Roval is 57 points. That seems pretty comfortable, but in his interview he said he is terrified of this race, and I'll get into that towards the end of this video, but Harvick, you really shouldn't be terrified because you got 57 points over the cut line. You're pretty much a lock-in after, next week, probably after stage 1 or 2. I don't know. It all depends on if you get stage points or not, but don't expect Harvick to get eliminated next week. I think the worst they say he's got to finish next week is 36, so he's pretty much a lock-in. Number 4, Brad Keselowski, who was going for 4 in a row, looks like he was going to do it. I mean, he had a really good race car last night, but they were pretty good on the short runs, and we mostly had long runs last night, and it really didn't play in his hands. In stage 3, it looked like, the short run, 60 laps to go, he's going to do it. And unfortunately, Kyle Busch got to him. It was a really good racing for the lead, even though these guys admitted they don't like each other whatsoever, even though they even admitted they probably wouldn't even get their kids to hang out together. But, I don't know. They may change their minds down the road. But they don't really like each other, but they race each other aggressively, but also very proper last night. So kudos to Brad. And, he burned the tires trying to hold off Kyle Busch, and he slipped from, after he lost the lead, he kept going back and finished 9th. So, fight for 4 in a row, came to a close, but he's through to the next round with the win from Las Vegas. So he really didn't have any pressure last night other than, just win 4 in a row. And number 5, guys that had so much bad luck last week had to come into this race and execute some solid runs. Some did, some didn't. So I'll get to Chase Elliott, but he was able to jump up to 4th. Eric Almirola, who had a 6th place finish last week, finished 5th last night at Richmond, which is his best finish overall. Backs up, what should have been a solid run for him in the spring. Austin Dillon, you wouldn't really expect Austin Dillon to run well at Richmond. His best finish here is 13th, and last night he pulled off a 6th place finish. That's huge, and he's above the point line going into Charlotte with 10 points. So that's crucial for the 3 car. But, Jimmy Johnson, he didn't gain anything. He didn't lose anything. He's 14th standings, only 6 behind despite an 8th place finish. Clay Boyer finished 10th, but he really had a bad night. Denny Hamlin, oh my goodness. People, if you watch what happened to Hamlin early in the race when he got bumped from Stenhouse in 3 and 4, he literally almost spun out and nearly caused a wreck, but he didn't, and they didn't throw the yellow. And he had to come to pit road for flat spot, after flat spot in the tires, got some 4 first Goodyear Eagles, and was able to drive his way back on the lead lap, and actually into the points at the end of stage 1. But unfortunately, things didn't go his way after that. After he got back on the lead lap, he really sucked and finished multiple laps down. Blaney did too, and this is not Blaney's best track. He finished 19th, so not totally surprised. But Hamlin and Eric Jones are really below the cut line. They 20-plus points behind. One of them's going to win next week, and one of them isn't. I don't think either of them are going to win, to be quite honest, because we don't know what to expect for this race. This is the first time we're doing this Roval thing, so we don't know what to expect. But Hamlin Jones, it's pretty simple. They got to win next week if they're going to get in. Finally, recap driver, Chase Elliott. Solid 4th place not signed after the disappointment last week in Vegas. Got my new shirt. This is his first win shirt, obviously. We had a really, really good race car last night. Like, practice, we were junk. I was really scared about last night's race, but when the green flag dropped, we were going to the front. Chase Elliott's car was opposite from the spring. In the spring, we were really good on the short runs, and long runs, we really weren't that good. Last night, we had a long run car, and fire-off speed was just terrible. I mean, we kept adjusting, we just couldn't figure it out. But he led some laps. We finished a solid 4th place. We're 9th in the standings, 10 points above the cut line. Although I'm not really comfortable with that margin, I'd rather be 30-plus points if that incident last week hadn't happened. I think we'd be in comfortable shape, but I'm feeling better that we're on the positive side, and hopefully we're there right where we need to be at the end of next week's race. So keep my fingers crossed. And also, I want to bring up Ryan Newman, who announced that he won't be back with RCR next year, has signed with Roush Fenway Racing, replacing Trevor Bain and Matt Kenseth for the 6 car next year. And to be quite honest, that could probably bring the 6 car and probably Roush Racing back to the top, because Ryan Newman has a degree in engineering from Purdue University, so he can help fix probably the bodies of the engines and make Roush Racing a whole lot better. And he's a veteran, and he's one of the toughest guys to pass the track. So Roush Racing may finally have a great year next year with Ryan Newman behind the wheel of one of their cars. So coming up next weekend is the Roval, and I am going to be there. And it's a special day next week, and I'll explain why. And I'll be filming. I'll be at the track. We don't know the expectation of the Roval. Last night, the broadcaster said, none of these guys that are not clinched their spot are going to sleep because we don't know what to expect, because testing videos, almost everybody crashed. So we don't know what to expect for this race, but we're going to find out next week. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to Rowdy. And the last race to get into the round of 12 begins next week. I'll see you then.